it almost feels wasteful to have humans doing half the things that they did a year ago in a computer. Well, it was forced on everyone. I feel like my mum could probably almost write a software application. AI came along and devalued those skills, and that was a bit of a shock to me. I think every company is going to become a software company, and they're going to start building lots of software internally that is going to be automating all sorts of aspects of the business.
Three to 5 years behind, that is where the trade press puts construction's AI maturity against comparable industries. And construction, by some measures, is sitting on the largest, richest, most unstructured pile of data of any sector on the planet. Specifications, risk assessments, site meeting minutes, compliance documents, drawings, decades of it. Modern language models would frankly eat this for breakfast. So why isn't anyone digging? My guest today says the honest answer has nothing to do with the technology. It has to do with whether the industry, and most other industries listening, is actually ready for AI or just talking about it. I'm Amrul Taff. This is The Control Layer. Today I'm with Sam Parkinson from Mettle Studio, and we're going to find out which one your organization really is. Sam, welcome. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. I think we've got some exciting things to talk about.
For sure. So 2 small promises, though, before we start. First, as a reminder, somewhere in the next hour, I'm going to extract a prediction from you to share with the audience on construction's AI maturity. So hopefully you've got that in your back pocket and inspiration springs forth, then you can share that with us.
I'm not sure it's quite in my back pocket yet. I'll get it there by the time you give me the question, I'm sure.
Well, you've got a bit of time, so
Yeah.
That's fine. Second, at the end, I'm going to ask you to give us a single sentence, the one a CFO would still be quoting back in 3 months' time. So, no pressure.
Okay.
So let's get into the meat of the episode. So why don't you talk me through a little bit about your role? Talk to me a little bit about Mettle Studio from your perspective, where you think the studio sits in the AI transformation conversation more broadly, and the kind of problems that clients tend to come to you for.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm co-founder of Mettle Studio, and we run Mettle Studio because we just love making things. We've got a team of 15 experts, and we all love what we do, and we enjoy coming to work. And that's really what Mettle Studio is about for us. And I think that I feel very privileged to be in that position. We are a design and engineering studio that build bespoke software for complex specialist organizations. So we work with a whole range of organizations, from very small ones, startups, maybe just one founder, through to multinational, big organizations. And in AI transformation, I think we really sit at the center of it, honestly. We are guiding these multinational organizations, helping them plan their roadmap for AI transformation, helping them change their infrastructure and architecture to support innovation and make the most of AI. And with startups, we help them deploy and deliver AI-driven products. And I guess internally at Mettle, our processes, the way we work, has been completely transformed within the last 6 months.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, we're definitely going to get into how it's transformed later in the episode, because that's a thread I'm going to pull. But in terms of the breadth of Mettle, so you mentioned software, you mentioned design. Do you also lead into the hardware side, or in terms of deploying infrastructure? How far does it go end to end?
Yeah, hardware can mean a few different things. And we have in the past designed and delivered things like bike lights. So really on the hardware side. So it has not
Wow.
been completely constrained to software. Our designers have come from industrial design backgrounds originally. And so, yeah, we have strayed that far into hardware. But on the technology side, from an infrastructure perspective, it depends on the client, but startups, we deploy and manage and service their whole infrastructure. With bigger organizations, we tend to work in a consultancy role, helping them decide what infrastructure they should deploy and how they should use it. Yes, quite a broad range of things that
A
we
broad
help people with.
spectrum of things you cover. Wow, fantastic. So why don't we move on to where we first met? I think digging into my terrible memory archives, I think it was back in the AI and Data Transformation in Construction Summit Europe 2026. What a mouthful that event was. So I think it's, for the audience, this was a room where there were tier one contractors, engineering consultancies, regulators, some software vendors and providers, etc., and all talking about where AI is, where data is in the construction industry more widely. So, from your perspective, and remembering back to that event, what do you remember about the event? You know, were people talking about, we've arrived when it comes to AI, or were they panicked because they felt they were too far behind, or was it something else entirely different?
Well, it was really interesting, wasn't it? I think it was it the end of January, early February? I'm not, it feels like it was around that time. And I mean, that is an age ago in this world we're living in now, right? It's 6 months in this new world of AI is forever. And although I'd say that the broad capabilities were kind of similar then, that you'd had the real explosion of LLM capabilities in sort of code generation and in reasoning. That had happened at the end of the previous year. But essentially, the mood was very much, I don't think people really knew what was coming. I think there was a lot of doubt, a lot of naivety, maybe a lot of people saying that it wasn't going to transform things very quickly, that their businesses weren't ready, that data wasn't ready, that just not super positive, really, I think was the vibe. Yeah, I don't know. Did you think you got the same vibe from it?
And I think that I certainly got a lot of uncertainty, that a lot of people just didn't know or couldn't fathom what the next step was. And in that uncertainty, there was faltering steps, I felt. There's a lot of, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back kind of discussions. So, but I mean, I was kind of interesting to understand from, your experience with some of the folks who come to you do you think that is a common feeling in the industry, or do you think it's unique to the people who were at that event and actually things are more positive?
So I think actually that wasn't the whole story at that event. There were some people who were presenting that their companies were starting these AI transformations, and there were select people who were really positive and could kind of see where we were going. But yeah, I'd say that maybe 6 months ago, that is what many people we talked to were saying. But I'd say that in that 6 months, the message has changed. People's perspectives have changed. And I feel like everyone is talking to us now like they need AI. They aren't sure what they need. They aren't sure how to do it yet. But I think they all see the value. They're all starting to realize it's what they need. And people are starting to get programs running.
Interesting. Interesting that so much has shifted in only a 6-month period. I guess that the marketing from the AI companies is doing a good job.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, there was an interesting stat that was thrown away around at that conference that's saying sort of, I think it was like an incredibly high percentage of AI use has created no productivity at all. And that was kind of the message at that conference. So it was kind of like people knew it was coming, but they didn't think they were ready, and they didn't think it was going to add any productivity. But I think people are now seeing that what it can do and have got a lot more trust in it.
No, I think I agree with you. I think it's the early dawn of any new technology. There's a level of uncertainty and doubt about whether it can really deliver. And I kind of feel we're in the cusp of that beginning with what's happening with agents and skills and a whole bunch of other technology pieces when it comes to AI. So yeah, I think that's definitely true. So what do you think was absent from the discussions? What do you think, what was discussed badly or was not on the agenda at all, but should have been?
Well, I mean, one of the key things, that thing about data not being ready, which was seen as a real blocker. I think what was not talked about was the fact that AI can enable the cleaning of that data, or it can make use of loads of messy data in ways that we couldn't before AI. So I guess that was really lacking. I think a few other pieces. I think data is less of a problem, really. I think cleaning up portions of your data to make it really useful for AI and sort of targeting AI at the right data can solve those problems fairly easily, really. But I think you've got governance is a real big subject, and changing mindsets, obviously. Then something that I've come to realize recently is that this AI transformation is really about enabling innovation. I think that it's about what we're trying to put in place for clients now is systems, tools, architectures that enable them to innovate and create and automate processes and automate all sorts of aspects of their work. And that is not about just getting AI in and asking AI to do something. It's about some of the incredible changes that have happened with people creating software is one of the central pieces. Like any smart engineer can create a great piece of software now that automates part of their process and changes and makes their work easier. So organizations have got to enable people to do that, give them the connectors to their data, give them places they can deploy it and share it. And that comes with a whole load of governance work to work out how to make that work and how to make it safe. So that they were sort of some of the subjects I think weren't touched on at all.
No, I agree. So I think data takes too much of the credit sometimes and too much of the audience. I think that there's an importance of having good quality data in terms of speeding up your journey to realizing the value of AI. But I don't think it's the only thing. And I think if you've got good enough data, and even in a small pocket, it can help you on that journey. And sometimes AI can help you improve the quality of your data as well, because you're utilizing some of the tools that are coming down the road. So I'd agree with that. So why don't we park construction for a minute? We'll come back to it, don't worry. And for the audience, let's try and build a maturity ladder. So let's talk about, let's look at it from this perspective. So imagine you've got 5 rungs, where rung 1 is organizations who go, we don't know what AI is, and frankly, we don't care. And all the way through to rung 5, where you have organizations who say, we run AI against and deliver measurable business outcomes with proper governance in place. So in your opinion, what do you think are the other rungs, the rungs 2, 3, and 4 on that ladder? What do you think they're called? Because sometimes I kind of feel in that journey, many people say there are 4, but often they're barely jumped off of 2, they're barely even, their fingertips on 2. So where do you think about that?
Yeah, okay. So I think you go from that kind of dismissal phase, which is where I think a lot of those people were in that conference in January. It can't help us. Our data's a mess. Our area is too complicated. I've asked Copilot, the unpaid for Copilot that has very limited capabilities, a few questions. It's not helped me, so AI is not going to work.
It's the tool's fault. It's always the tool's fault. Never the tool owner.
Yeah. So that's that first phase. And I think you get into where a lot of people are really is shadow AI experimentation. Like the company hasn't bought anything for anyone. They can't work out what they should buy, or they haven't worked out the risks or how they should support it. But all your employees have used AI in personal use. Everyone's doing that. And their partners are starting to use it in workloads. And so they are starting to basically bring it in and do work with Claude or ChatGPT or any of the other platforms. And they start to get results out of it, and everyone knows about it in the company. And the leaders suddenly need to do something about it. So I think that's phase 2, really, is people realize that it can be really useful, and we've got to do something. Like, we've got all of these ungoverned tools. There's huge risks. We need to sort it out. So that's phase 2. I think. Do you think you agree with that, Emma? I think that's probably where a lot of people are.
I think so. I think certainly. I think beyond not knowing and not caring, there's an element of, I agree with you, experimentation and folks trying things out without people realizing, because, or certainly no one central realizing, and that kind of burgeoning experience that actually there's a critical mass of folks who are crying out for a capability you haven't given them.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, but I think it's kind of an exciting time for companies, and I think the employees are starting to really enjoy working with it generally. They kind of probably, I mean, I've definitely found it, that work becomes more rewarding. You're kind of less the drudgery, and yeah, they're dying out for it, and they don't want to go back to not using it.
Mm.
So yeah, so then the company's got to sort it out, and they've got to work out where to put their investment. And then I think that maybe the next rung is the very easy jump, or the standard jump, is that we put Copilot in. We get Copilot for everyone. And I think that has to be done carefully and properly. Yeah, and I think it's a good thing, really, getting proper paid for Copilot. That brings a lot of capabilities to people. It probably doesn't take people quite as far as what they're able to do with their shadow AI, but it's definitely a good step forward. It doesn't have to be Copilot, obviously. There are other providers, but
there are other tools available on the market.
Yeah. Yes. And arguably better ones. But anyone who's in the Microsoft stack, it's very useful, and it's an easy option, really. It's hard to argue against it, really. There are arguments against, but it's not. It does make a lot of sense. And I think that they maybe think that this is a silver bullet, and that's going to deliver everything they need. They've enabled it. They've got AI. They've paid a good amount for the licenses. It's starting to cost them some money, but they are seeing a return on investment, I think, on that pretty quickly. But then, so I think that's maybe the third round. But then I think there's a realization that there's a lot of work to do. I think a lot of companies do realize that at the Arc side, but there's definitely at some point there's a realization that there's a lot of work to do. There's the data to be organized better. Doesn't have to be completely cleaned up, but organized better, have some more structure around it. There's connectivity. They've got systems that don't talk to each other, or that you can't talk to awkwardly. They've got, so there's connectivity. There's tooling to allow people to innovate, like I was saying, something that we're helping the companies with, like places that you can deploy apps to safely and securely, places that people can put automations and workflows running in the background, and governance and tooling around that. So I think there's maybe that next stage where people realize there's so much more value to get out of AI, but it requires a program. And so it's that putting in that program and a team, dedicated team. You do need some specialists in at that point who are kind of helping you to architect a system. And I think that's going to take a lot of companies into digital, into software development, where they never really thought they were going to be. I think every company is going to be software development. I think that's a big shift that people aren't maybe talking about that much. I know people are talking about it, but I feel like every company of 50 plus employees maybe is going to want a software team, because Well, I talked earlier about how anyone now with skills can develop software, and that's great. But taking it to a productionized level, being able to deploy it in a company securely and safely, being able to scale it across more than a few people in an organization and be able to maintain it, you still need software developers. And so I think this innovation is going to enable lots of people in the company to create tools, but those tools are going to be really useful, and the company's going to want to deploy them and allow their whole teams to use them. And you're going to need software engineers in your company to do that. So yeah, so I think software engineers are going to be really busy.
But I think I agree with you. I think there's I think the nature of what a software engineer is expected to do will shift, as I think all roles end up shifting. I think the idea of a software engineer tippy-tapping away, I think is probably, if not now, then soon, disappearing. That idea of that being the primary role. This idea of a combined engineer who can, plan, can orchestrate, can agentically code, and can review, and a more well-rounded role, I think, is probably going to be more of the common norm. And that role, I think, is going to shoot through the roof. There'll be lots of people trying to hire those people because, as you say, I think the barrier to entry to software engineering has dropped so low. Somebody in their bedroom can code now. They could before, but they had to have a whole stack of understanding about languages or whatever.
I feel like my mum could probably almost write a software application. She could hardly use her she could hardly use her email client. So it's kind of easy.
My mum can barely turn the TV on, so my mum couldn't. But not that she have the desire to. But absolutely, I think the idea, the knowledge gap, that barrier to entry, I think has started to disappear. But I think that doesn't eliminate the wider experience gap to understand how these bits of code interact with real outcomes, real infrastructure, real security challenges, etc. And that, I think, requires still some element of experience.
It's like everything in AI. People are moving up the value chain. The AI can do all of the lower level stuff. Yeah, it's, like I say, it's changed my role completely. I used to love getting into the weeds and doing software development, and I kind of valued those skills. And in some way, AI came along and devalued those skills, and that was a bit of a shock to me. But it's kind of moved. But it's moved my value up the chain. It's creating a simple application that solves a few problems for people, like even iteratively building on that slowly. Like, yeah, okay, that can be done as well, as long as it stays within a very simple domain, and anyone can build that now, and that's amazing. But software gets a lot more complicated than that, and it gets a lot more complicated than that quite quickly. And especially when you're talking about deploying apps throughout an enterprise or even a reasonably sized company, and it interfacing with all the systems, and it not making a mess of that, and being maintained and staying working and being able to be updated and be stable. Software becomes a lot more complicated. And that's where our role is now as a software developer. It's doing the serious stuff, the harder stuff.
So going back to the ladder, so if by the time you get to rung 4, you're an organization that has invested in a program, has invested in either external expertise or building out internal expertise, and to be able to deliver that program, do you think there is what's the right word, a chasm between the rung 3 and 4? Where do you think that is a big step jump to take, and actually many people go as far as 3 or fall over the cliff of it and never come back?
Yeah, I guess that 4 is probably where the serious investment comes in, right? And it does require a bit of a leap of faith. I mean, certainly with our clients, we'd like to take them kind of step by step and try to kind of iteratively do that and release value all the time. I guess there is a bit of an understanding that this is going to be more of an ongoing investment, that you are going to have software, that you are going to have to maintain software that's going to be in your company where maybe you weren't doing that before. There's definitely, and you aren't just buying a service, you aren't just buying Copilot anymore. Like you're actually doing complex stuff and changes to that. And so, yeah, that's a leap of faith, isn't it?
Interesting. And then to go from 4 to 5 where you're realizing value and you've got governance in place, how much of a leap do you think that is?
I would say that the 4 is the thing that unlocks 5.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think there's obviously then the change management process. Like you've got the systems in place, you've got the tools there, and you've got a process of change management, making people adopt these new ways of working. And that's going to take some time. But I think once you've got all that in place, you're then into the real value unlocking stage, which is 5. You can scale, you can release lots of things, you've got lots of automations going. There's going to be ongoing challenges there for sure. But I think you're into the real value creation there.
Quick break. The control layer exists for one reason: to bring you the people actively shaping the world we'll all live in next. The architects, the operators, the decision makers whose calls you'll be living with 5 years from now. We publish their thinking every week on Substack, free. Every claim is sourced, every prediction goes on a tracker we revisit publicly when the test date comes up. If you want to be in the room when the future gets built, subscribe at link.arcava.ai/join. Now, back to the conversation.
Interesting. So, so let's sort of broaden this out and allow folks with a practical example to try and recognize themselves in that practical example. So imagine it's an organization of say 200 people. So probably not like, a massive company, mid-market, say. So they've got one really overworked head of IT who has just been told they're now also the AI lead. So a board, I know, and they've got a board that has read 3 economist pieces and suddenly think they're really well informed about AI and they've got strong opinions. So they've got a real budget, but it's not really unlimited. Whose is? So where do you think that firm really is on the ladder? And what do you think is the most reliable signal? Just one thing that tells you they're talking about AI rather than actually doing AI.
Well, it feels that they're probably at the between 2 and 3. Right? They've been given you've got someone reasonably senior who's got a budget to do something. Now, them being the IT lead, I imagine they're probably quite happy about this, to be honest. Because at the moment they know that lots of people are using shadow AI in the business. There's lots of ungoverned work going on. There's lots of potential security data breaches that might happen by people doing things the wrong way. So I think that they're probably pretty happy. They're probably a bit worried about the amount of work they're going to have, maybe. But so maybe that's the kind of what I'm thinking they're thinking at that point. They know they need it, and they know they need to get this AI use under control and start getting more monitoring in it and observability and being able to control it better, I think.
Is there one thing that would be a signal for them to say they moved on from 2 and they're firmly in 3?
Yeah, well, I think so. When we're talking to companies now about this stage, we're working with a couple of companies in this area. We're always trying to talk to them about the fact that yes, they're bringing in the first kind of proper system for AI, and we're telling them that there is this program and there's so much potential to unlock there, and so we'll be looking to introduce something like Copilot, but also at the same time looking for a real low-hanging fruit, a high-value opportunity for automating a process that couldn't be automated before. And we'd be looking to help them release that new service, something like Copilot, in the best way possible. But alongside that, also make use of some of the other tooling that's in place in a system like Microsoft. I mean, again, there's AWS, there's Google, all of them have the same things. But yeah, just showing them a taste of what you can do by doing something like bringing in a custom agent or a custom flow that's now automating a process that you had to do manually before. So I think that kind of provides their employees with the kind of base tooling, and it actually does usually allow them to experiment a certain amount, but we'd constrain that, make sure it's nicely controlled. But we also give a vision and a low hanging fruit and an example of what is now possible.
So I think, and tell me if I'm being unfair with this particular organization, let's say it, because I think sometimes when you're at level at rung 2 or 3, an organization might say they've set up an AI steering committee, right? So when when I engage with organizations and say they've done that, part of me sighs and despairs because I think in my experience that the steering committee can just be a polite way of like looking busy without actually doing anything.
Yeah, and possibly trying to write really complex policies and guidance about AI when they haven't even tried it and don't really know what they need, or almost quite often I think they end up putting loads of blockers in place when they don't necessarily need them. There's another risk.
Yeah, it's like putting laws in place when you don't know what the crime is.
Yeah,
It's kind of, you should probably figure that one out first so you can write the better law that's more likely to limit the crime.
I think there is a risk of that. There's also a risk of going the other way and enabling too much stuff too quickly, and that obviously there's a middle ground.
For sure. So do you think there's a reliable sign if a company's stuck on rung 2, but they're pretending to be a 4?
Yes, I guess the kind of, maybe they've decided that they'll only give a select team access to all of the capabilities, and they're trying to piecewise solve everyone's problems with a small team because they're like, these are the only people who should be trusted. That kind of thing can happen, I think. And while that's happening, and that's not really making the most of everyone's ingenuity and really unleashing the power of AI, you've got the rest of the company still doing shadow AI all over the place. And they are doing it. They're just not doing it in the governed way. I imagine that's happening in lots of companies right now.
No, I agree. I think there's a theater to technology change where people can, and it's, things that are getting a lot of press. I mean, it used to be cloud, then now it's AI. Oh, no, wait, cloud, then big data, now AI. So where everyone's jumping on the next bandwagon. I feel though that AI is one that can really realize the value that it purports to be able to achieve. But also you then get into a scenario where some organizations want to look like they're doing something, but the reality is there's no real tangible, measurable impact that they're making from the work, the effort they're putting into it. And I think that can be a danger because it can feel almost performative. And what's worse, it can feel almost performative for the employees who want to try and do and learn and leverage this technology rather than and not see the value that they know they could do because it's all stuck in this theater.
Yeah, well, it's super interesting on actually because I think you've got, in digital product, it's always been the case that you want to measure how well you're doing. You've got your KPIs, you've got your analytics, you've got your measures, and you want to show that you need to be able to measure that you're providing value and what bits are working and what bits aren't and how you should change and adapt. And so in the world I'm in, it's kind of no different with AI. Yes, you want to be able to do that as well. And I think it's a really important part of adopting AI and moving it forward in a company and making it a success. But it's actually also not easy. It's like you think about a interaction between someone and a chatbot, and it's maybe then a conversation of 15 turns. And like, where in that conversation was the value made, and how can you reliably measure that? Like, how you'd need another LLM to assess the whole conversation and try to work out how much. It's actually quite hard to work out the value from kind of immediate immediate analytics. So it's quite an interesting one. But I think you have to go back to like higher level business objectives. You need to look at. I think it'd be interesting. I think it would come down to things like customer retention, how many bids you win, and things like that. Because I think the quality will go up, right? I've talked about this before. I think the quality will go up, as well as reducing headcount to some extent. But I think people will fill their time and actually do better work than they've ever done before. So I think, customer retention, winning more bids, doing better work, which are things that take longer to see return on and be able to measure.
I agree. I think that's I think the traditional technology KPIs has a value in the sense of understanding technology, but doesn't necessarily have a value in understanding the value it brings to a business. And I think if you can measure what the business measures, its purpose around, the reason why it exists, those measures, how AI can directly impact that, I think that's when you start to get a real conversation shift away from it being performative and towards it being game-changing.
Saying that's not the case in all. In some cases, there will be a process that someone needs to do, and AI will make that process 10 times quicker, and that person will be able to do 10 times as many in a day, and that will be quite easy to remember, to measure. So there's going to be differences depending on the actual application.
Oh yeah, for sure. But going back to I think I saw it was an article that I saw in the Mettle Studio Substack. I don't know if you wrote or whether it was Alex. I think the premise of it was the orthodox line is that the data is a mess, clean it up before you can do AI. And I think you've argued the opposite, that the mess is the gold mine. So can you walk me through that a little bit? Also, if you're right, every consultancy selling a 5-year data cleansing program, into a construction firm is probably selling them the wrong product. So what does that say to you?
Yeah, so I think I definitely think it's right that this idea that the data is a mess and that's stopping us using AI. That's not true. It's just not true, because so many AI applications don't even need loads of data at all. And AI can be a really useful tool for extracting good value out of messy data. So yeah, an example like automating a process that someone does in their day job. Maybe they're reviewing a drawing against a contract. That kind of happens in engineering quite a lot, and you have to have certain things in there to make sure that it's matching what the contract needed. AI can do that with just the contract and the drawing. You don't need loads of data underlying it. That's not really how AI works anymore. We aren't training machine learning engines. Like, we've got a general purpose LLM that's able to do really clever stuff with very limited inputs. So data being a mess is not a thing that stops you using AI. Data being sorted out and having loads of value out of data does make more AI applications possible. And that's great. So it's not something that you shouldn't not stop cleaning up your data, and you shouldn't stop trying to make your data more valuable. But yeah, AI is a capability of being able to extract that value. So I guess that's where the gold mine comes from. Like, you've got thousands of projects of data all over SharePoint, and you want to learn something about how projects are run, or some aspect of a project and how that's typically affected, maybe some kind of risk and how that's typically affected a project over those thousands of projects. Now, that messy data is probably messy and different on different projects, but you feasibly can spin up hundreds of agents to go in and do a similar analysis of all those projects and pull out some strands of kind of more standard data out of them and give you insights. So yeah, I guess that's where that message comes from.
So translating that for that head of IT at that 200-person firm, what do you think is the key takeaway for them if they've now started to think about AI and what they should do next?
Don't necessarily worry about your data being in a mess. there's certain things that you're going to want to do where you're going to need to invest in data cleansing, but don't let it be a blocker to you bringing AI in. You can see AI as an enablement for it. For sorting it out. There are actually risks. So, like if you bring in something like Copilot and you give it broad access to SharePoint, and SharePoint is a mess and it's got loads of conflicting information in it, Copilot will bring back inconsistent results, and you've got maybe 6 versions of your HR policy in there. It'll bring back data from the old one instead of the new one. So there are certainly things that don't work as well if you don't have AI data sorted. But the job of fixing that is often not as big and daunting as it seems originally in our experience.
Interesting. So the next thing I want to sort of test the theory out on you and get your perspective on it and, challenge me. So the blocker when it comes to data isn't technical. It's that the work between, we have data and we have insight, that governance work is the kind of stuff that people don't generally enjoy. The document control, the defining policy, the defining what good looks like in a specification document or a policy standard. That's unglamorous, it's unsexy, but necessary. Do you think that that's true? It's because it's boring that people don't want to do it, and that's why it doesn't get done? Or do you think I'm missing it and actually there's lots of folks who do?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting point. Yeah, writing the policies, defining the governance, defining why something's allowed and why it's okay and what risks there are and what's acceptable. It's both unglamorous and unsexy and a bit boring. And also people are having to they're having to be responsible for risks as well. I think that's something that's maybe not so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think that is true that often makes it slower. I think the actual work about extracting value from data, I think turning data into insights, it takes a certain type of person, but I think there are definitely people who love that. So, and we'll really, data engineers, data scientists who love looking at data and processing it and processing loads of data and pulling insights out of things. I don't think people hate that bit. But I think the bit of define those policies, working out what the risks are, putting your stamp of approval to accept certain risks and things, that's the bit that it's hard.
So I want to delve into a little bit into one of Mettle Studio's writings. So I think you've argued around construction's conservatism. The thing that the rest of the technology industry uses as a punchline, right? That we're kind of backward. I think there was a McKinsey study about digital transformation report from 2018, I think it was, that kind of put construction globally just above hunting in terms of its digital ability and its enablement of digital capability. But I think you've argued that rather than construction's conservatism being a negative, it's actually some form of superpower. So moving slowly forces the kind of hard questions around governance and risk that we've talked about and identifying use cases that maybe if you're going a bit fast, you might skip over entirely. So is that something you believe? Is that something that's shifted and changed? Because I think if you're right, the sector is quite a long way behind.
Yeah, well, a long way behind some places. I think all sorts of sectors will move at different rates, but I think there's elements to that. Where can we come from with that? I guess if you're a company that is on the leading edge of that, then I think you could be in a good place in, say, 5 years, because these programs of AI transformation do take time. And because it's conservative and maybe people aren't seeing people moving very quickly, or also the benefits take a while to realize and people don't even quite realize how fast some people are moving. You might be able to kind of sneak under the radar and come out and have this capability that people are way away from. Yeah, so that could be a superpower. I think the idea of going slowly and cautiously, that definitely has some benefits.
Sorry, I just had a great idea. You're doing guerrilla AI. You're really underneath behind the lines.
Under the radar, yeah.
Under the radar doing this work. Special Forces AI. Excellent.
Yeah. There's maybe, there's been some shocking stories, haven't there, about people bringing in a lot around sort of AI customer support. There was Klarna had a huge fail because they went too fast in trying to replace all their customer support with AI assistants. Really massive fail there. So there's definitely a risk of going too quick. I guess, I don't know. There's got to be a middle ground, hasn't there, really? I think it is a new area. People are learning a lot. I mean, ideas about how you should do things are changing all the time. If you're right at the leading edge of that, there's risks and you're going to make mistakes. If you're too far behind, then you become a dinosaur and you could get displaced or replaced by someone else. So it's got to be that. There's got to be somewhere in between.
That's a good point. I think it's important that every organization in every industry goes at the pace that they need to, because ultimately they're all commercial organizations, or mostly. But also at the same time, there is a prevailing risk that those who have realized the productivity gain and the cost reduction gain that can happen with truly being a AI first organization, let's call it that. And I'm sure there'll be a new phrase for it at some point. Their ability to access the market, to service customers, to bring value to those customers, it will be greater than everyone else's that they're competing against. And so it becomes a real challenge, an existential challenge for some of those others who haven't been able to keep up. If you can do, 10 bids in the same time it takes to do 2, just from the law of averages, you're probably going to win some of them.
And I think that is where probably the biggest impact will come the quickest, actually, is in that bid in that early phase. Because, if you're able to produce 5 times as many bids, and those bids are actually higher quality than you've ever been able to do before, which will be the case, then you're going to be winning more work. And then, then everything pulls out from that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there is a burgeoning challenge which is separate to this, which is one is a productivity gap and a competitiveness gap, but then also that burns into a auditability gap. Because I'm pretty sure, particularly in construction, which is one of the more litigious industries in the world, I've gone through 25 years and been to umpteen different types of legal cases. But someone's always suing you for something, even if it's got nothing to do with you. So that at some point there'll be a case around, what did your agent do? What did your AI agent do? And can you prove it? And then the same vein of, which happens behind the scenes of various organizations where people are running around trying to find emails and documents and SharePoint sites, and this person is left, and what did they say to whom, and Teams messages and the like. The same rigor will be brought into AI agents. You use your AI agent autonomously to do this thing. Did it do it, or did someone else's agent do it? And I think that's going to be the new battle that'll come, particularly in the more litigious industries. That probably isn't talked about enough at the moment, but I'm pretty sure will be at some point. Yeah,
I mean, I think in America now, like, if an AI produces any output, you can't say that output's yours. Which I think is quite interesting, because I know that virtually all of the written output that I produce now is produced by an AI, but it's definitely produced by me. I think like the AI would never have produced that without me telling it exactly what I wanted it to produce. And yes, it was involved. It was a brainstorming partner, a sparring partner. It's helped me get my thoughts way better than I would have done without it. But ultimately, the output was, I'm confident, is my output. It was written by AI. So, I think that's an interesting space.
I think so. I think it'll be an interesting legal space as well, particularly around, as you say, around ownership. Who owns work produced by AI, and how does that, is it the AI company, or is it the organization that's deployed it? One for another day. So let's lean into some of your experiences from the wild. If you can think of a construction or civil engineering project where AI actually changed an outcome. So wasn't a demo, not a pilot, an outcome. Was it a story where it should have changed an outcome but didn't? Or do you think you learned something about it, about why it didn't?
That's interesting. I've got an example, but I'm not sure how happy I am with it.
Okay.
Yes, there is. I think.
Well, let the audience be the judge.
No, okay, yeah, okay. Let's see if people like it. I think the outcome that I've seen in one recent project is it was a process that was automated through AI. And it was a process that wasn't really seen as a burden for people, for project managers, kind of a reporting process. And it wasn't done very well. A lot of people were like trying to find ways to sidestep it and not do it properly or just copy paste. It meant that there was just a lack of visibility of how that project was going, and the process as a whole had a kind of really good meaning to kind of make people reflect and make sure they were really reviewing how things were going and keep track of projects and keep them running well. I think a system was brought in that kind of brought AI into that process, and AI was like an assistant that did all the note taking and then formed that into a really quality response and then submitted that automatically. And I mean, it was an interesting app that was kind of part AI and part just good data engineering and infrastructure. But that's transformed that process, and it's transformed people's views of that process. People enjoy doing it, enjoy the interaction that AI gives them. They're getting more out of it, and the leadership are getting way more out of it. They're getting faster data about projects. They get more accurate data, more complete data. So I think generally it's just been very well received, and it's turned that laborious sort of drudgery process that people didn't really want to do into something of more value for everyone. So
This episode is brought to you by Arcava. I'm Amir Altaf, the founder. The EU has confirmed it. Every high-risk AI system operating in the EU must be auditable, accountable, and reconstructable on demand by December 2027. That's 18 months, less if you count procurement. Arcava turns sovereign AI into outcomes your board can measure and builds them on a foundation regulators will recognize. UK built, auditable by default, engaged by the outcome. If you're standing up an AI program that has to be defensible by 2027, start now. Contact us at arcava.ai.
And how hard was it to put in place? Or supplementary, how hard was it to get people to start using it?
well, it was forced on everyone. They didn't have a choice.
Nothing like a mandate, a policy, thou shalt
Yeah.
use. Yes.
Yeah, they didn't have any choice. So this is one where adoption has been great. But in terms of how it wasn't easy to put that into place. It took maybe 4 or 5 months of hard work to build that product and release it. But really, releasing a product to an organization of that size, of that importance, within 4 or 5 months, that is completely revolutionizing a process, I think is pretty amazing, actually. So, and yeah, that's partly due to the amazing capabilities that LLM are bringing us in that kind of software development space.
So, moving on to talk more broadly around construction and where it sits within the UK. So, construction in this country can generate some highly sensitive data, whether it's critical national infrastructure designs, defense, adjacent project documentation, energy network specifications, or transport network drawings. So UK regulation, most of that data has to stay within the UK jurisdiction. Governmental clients demand that, whether that's national highways or network rail, they all bid on all those contracts. They tend to tend to require that. But the AI tools the industry is now using, whether it's shadow AI or they're trialing to mine that data, to get value out of that data, most of them are running on US headquartered platforms with American cloud infrastructure running it underneath. So do you think construction is actually cognizant of that dynamic, or do you think they're walking into some kind of data sovereignty problem that they'll be experiencing 5 years from now?
I feel that it's sort of like a pretty major sort of national security issue in a way, isn't it? That we haven't got big data centers running these AI models. I mean, so much work is going to have so much reliance on these major US companies with their US data centers. And we will become so reliant on it everywhere. Agents will be doing so much of the work. And if that's turned off or made not available, I think that would be at the point where it'll start crippling us if we don't have it. So I think from that perspective, it's a big issue. The data side, I kind of think is interesting. And I'd argue that it's less of an issue, but I can understand why people think it is a big issue. People have been operating on Microsoft ecosystems for decades, and things like email scanning systems will be distributed around the world and will shift data outside of UK all the time. And I don't think people have been particularly worried about sending emails and having emails scanned. Sending a message to an LLM and getting a response back. Kind of Microsoft, Google, they have policies where like they don't retain any of that. It's just data that's running in memory and gets sent back, and there's no log. So like that data is sort of transiently passing the network and back. In a similar way to kind of the email scanning, etc. works. So I'm not sure how big a data kind of security issue that is. I'm sure people would disagree. I'm sure people would say that it has to stay in the UK boundary and it can't leave. I think for super sensitive stuff, I can understand that. But for stuff that's like below kind of secret military level or that kind of really kind of national security stuff, I think we've been using services all over the world for a long time to do all sorts of things. And just because it's AI and it's this kind of mystical being, which it's not really, does that actually change it? Yeah.
I think it depends on the organization and maybe even the time and effort people spend on reading updates to T's and C's, which, let's be honest, most people don't. So even organizations, there tends to be a lag between one and the other. I mean, there was a story that came out very recently, I think, about the use of Grok for software development, where Grok was actually storing and training itself on software projects that people were using for coding without the user knowing. And it was only after some investigation that it turned out to be true.
Elon Musk is a naughty boy, isn't he?
He's a naughty boy. He's a naughty boy. But obviously they had to come out and say this was an error, this was a mistake. It was a setting they were trialing that they shouldn't have rolled out to everybody. And so it was a flash in the pan from their perspective. But I think the risk that poses, though, is that could happen at any time. And depending on the laws of the country that company operates in, it may be that they are under no obligation to notify people or even change it when it does. And I think that's where I think there's a risk that is posed. But I do think it's about managing the risk, because there are some types of data that, if it's on a US platform or, I don't know, a Chinese platform, does it really matter? I mean, it's a product that's being served.
But calling an AI model, I don't think changes it from any other service where you're passing data. And I just think we should apply the same rules, really. Because any company that you're sending any data to, it doesn't have to be to an AI. They could be withholding that. They could be holding it, and they could use it to train things.
Mm-hmm.
Like we put your code onto GitHub servers. Where's that held? And GitHub could take all that code and train everything on it. I mean, they've got policies that say they won't. So I think it's just, I'm not. I'm going to be corrected on this. I'm going to find out I'm wrong, but I don't know why it's different.
Well, I think the topic of sovereignty is a definition that is yet to be agreed by anybody. I think sovereignty can range from focusing, as we've discussed, on data, which, historically it has been GDPR, other regulations there. How do you treat data differently to other things and whatnot? But I think it's evolving to where do you process information, to what infrastructure does it rely on, all the way down to actually, if it turned off, how bad would it be? How damaging would it be to your organization? It wasn't out long enough for anyone to do this, but if you relied on Anthropic's Fable AI model for a critical business process and it suddenly turned off at 5:21 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, which it did, so you'd be up the proverbial creek without a paddle.
And when you've got governments that have the power to do that as well, so it's not even, and governments are becoming pretty crazy.
So, right. So imagine now, we're going to move on, bit of a shift, but imagine you're a strategist sitting opposite a head of digital at a tier 1 construction firm. They're about to sign with a US headquartered AI vendor for let's call it a document intelligence platform that'll ingest everything: specifications, risk assessment, compliance documents, drawings, what have you. Everything they've done in the last 10 years. What do you think is the question they should ask the vendor before they sign?
Oh, wow. So many questions. There was a lot. It sounds pretty critical. Yeah, I imagine quite sensitive data. I mean, I'd be looking to be able to self-host that probably at this point, to even like potentially own deployment of it. I'd probably be even hoping that it was open source to some extent at the moment. Yeah, I don't know. Just you're going to be absolutely reliant on that company carrying on and existing. I mean, certainly you'd need ways of migrating away from it. That would be a big decision. I think you need to do some proper due diligence there.
And therein lies the difference between rung 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think something you said there was really interesting. Leaning into maybe doing open source because of the nature of the content and having, I guess, the organization having more ownership around the AI itself and what it does. Are you seeing organizations lean into the idea of, hate to say own building, but own manufacturing AI, because they're not really building AI, but own manufacturing, self-build kits for AI?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see appetite for building things more. There's a lot, and for building fairly significant pieces of software that are doing things in a slightly bespoke way for companies. Yeah, I definitely think the SaaS model is struggling and it's becoming less viable. At the same time, there's still definitely a place for it. Yeah, there's more ambition from companies and a realization that you can achieve more. And open source, I think, is a big thing at the moment. I mean, more and more contributors, agents able to develop open source software, and so that's going to advance and get more powerful, and with it has become risks and issues at the same time. But I mean, I think they're being resolved. Yeah, I think more ambition. I think I'm seeing in companies to kind of build, to make slightly bespoke versions or make things really fit for them and work for them, rather than just having to buy off the shelf and deal with what you're given and work around the issues.
I love the analogy of the difference between buying an off-the-shelf or off-the-rack suit versus having a tailored suit. Now, one's a bit more expensive than the other, but one will probably last longer and fit you perfectly.
So, it definitely depends on the situation, but I think the argument of buy versus build is shifting a bit. Maybe there's more appetite to buy in like the core building blocks and the infrastructure, the kind of Lego bricks that allow you to assemble things as you need them to. rather than buying the whole solution in a kind of one size fits all.
Yes, I agree with you, particularly as we talked about earlier about the knowledge barrier to entry when it comes to building products dropping, but do you really want to spend your effort building everything?
No.
You don't
want to spend your time building your auth solution every time that you need to get pen tested. You want just a layer that you can apply on everything and that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I think is the Meccano kit, for those who are old enough to remember what a Meccano kit is. The Meccano kit of AI is probably the route I suspect most organizations will be taking. So why don't we move on and right? So why don't we broaden the conversation out away from construction? Let's not be so focused on that for now. Whether it's I don't know, financial services, healthcare, retail, defense, or public sector, I think they're all going to be really interested in the topic of AI and might be listening. So imagine a listener gets to work on Monday morning. They want to find out within a week whether their organization is actually ready for AI or just talking about it, right? Are they being performative? Is it just theater, or they really are doing something with AI? So what are the 3 concrete things they should look out for? Whether it's a document, a set of behaviors, a policy, tools, that if they go and look at them, that will give them the real answer in less than a week.
I mean, there's a couple of different ways of looking at this, but I'm going to give a very simple answer that I think everyone is ready for AI, or everyone should be using AI, because I think that AI is obviously so useful. It's so good at doing anything with a computer. If you're using a computer, you should be using AI. It almost feels wasteful to have humans doing half the things that they did a year ago in a computer. AI can just do that for you. So that's the very simple answer. That is the company ready for AI. I guess that's things like governance. Have they got their idea about their kind of security posture and stuff in place? Kind of feel like a company should be able to, if they put their mind to it, comes back to the kind of boring bit, and that's why it takes so long. But if you put your mind to it, I feel like a company could get over that in a couple of weeks. Like just get it done, just work it out, enable it, and get people using it.
I think anyone who's been on the receiving end of some of those governance elements wishes it could happen in a couple of weeks. And you're right. If people really wanted to do stuff, we could do it in a couple of weeks. But I think some of these, the larger the organization.
Yeah. More people you've got to get involved. More people have got to sign it off. Yes. No. Agreed. No. Yeah, that's a bit naive. But I think it's not insurmountable. And yeah, it's just so useful. Everyone should be using it in Office.
Fantastic. Right. So we have come to the point of the podcast where we talk about predictions. So the control layer commits to predictions. We kind of, every guest shares a prediction, and we have a reminder and a tracker that goes, well, okay, well, what did people say when? Right. So we just can keep ourselves a bit honest, but just keep mindful of all the knowledge and experience that people have shared from what they think will happen in the world. So from your experience and your view, would you have a prediction about where construction will head, the construction industry will head when it comes to AI maturity? Is there a specific thing, outcome, something that you predict will happen?
I mean, I'm going to come back to something I've said in the past, earlier in this episode. I guess kind of relating to my industry, my kind of software engineering, product engineering industry. I feel like I feel lucky. I think we're going to be busy because I think every company is going to become a software company, and they're going to start building lots of software internally that is going to be automating all sorts of aspects of the business. And I feel like in the 5-year horizon, that's my prediction. All companies will be entering that space or will be there already.
So do you think is there a particular signal that will show that is now starting to happen?
Job adverts everywhere for developers, I think.
Brilliant. That's a good one. Yeah, if people start hiring for internal job. But that's an interesting point. So do you think there'll still be a place for studios such as yourselves in a world where companies are deciding they're going to hire their own? How did you feel that was going to shake up?
I think, so far it seems like there is a place for us, which is good. I think that
so far so good.
Yeah, I think that it's not easy to build teams like that, and it's not easy to go from being a company that doesn't make software to being a company that does make software. It's not just as easy as hiring people. You need to hire quite a few different skills and have them working together nicely and have the right processes in place. So quite often what we bring to companies is starting them off on that journey, setting them off in the right direction. And we quite often help them with hiring and building teams. But actually, when you're that embedded in a company and you've helped them there, even when they've got their own team, they tend to still value the work you've done and continue working with you. So yeah, I think that's So I'm hopeful. Fingers crossed. It seems like there is a place.
So I also said this was the second question I would ask that I flagged at the beginning. So if you could leave the listener with one sentence about construction's AI story, what it's actually telling us about the wider economy, what do you think that sentence would be? The thing that a CFO would still be quoting in 3 months' time.
Oh, okay. I didn't have this one in my back pocket. I still don't. I think it's an interesting one. There's something about the construction industry where the margins are so small. That makes the AI, that has some certain, the elements that change the AI story, I think, because of the fact that AI is quite expensive. Also, the fact that it has the potential to reduce headcount, and that can make things cheaper, and that can have some real benefits, I guess, for construction. But I also always really like to think about AI as being something that can raise the bar and increase quality as well. So it doesn't necessarily make things cheaper. Yeah, what does that do to consultancies who are working in that area who get squeezed? I would hope that, for a CFO in a construction-related industry, they would not just be hoping that AI is going to increase their margin or reduce their costs, but is also going to allow them to expand or get more opportunities, grow the business, do things that are more ambitious. So, I guess that's what I'm hoping from a CFO lens, that people are looking at it, not just looking about reducing, cutting jobs, the damaging parts of what AI could bring, but actually thinking about the opportunities and how things can grow and get better.
I think that's a brilliant place and a brilliant sentence to leave it on, because I think you're right. Often the argument and the discussion is AI is taking our job, but it's not enough. It's not talked about enough that if you're going to make people 10 times more productive, they can deliver more for your business. If you're reducing the cognitive load on people because AI is helping with some of the work they're producing, that they can then produce really good quality work, 10 times more of it, then there is more work you can go after. There's more opportunity to close on. There are more deals you can win. So I absolutely agree that the lens people should be looking through is not just, well, let's cut the bottom line, but actually rather let's focus on the top line and see how we can generate more revenue in different ways.
Yeah, agreed.
Brilliant. Well, it's always good to get to a podcast ending where you can agree with your guests. So, right. So this last question is one which I throw in because it's fun. Well, it's fun for me. I'm not sure it's fun for the guest, but it's fun for me. So, right, put your imagination cap back on. So you are in a time machine. You're in the DeLorean from Back to the Future. You've gone back in time. You've only gone back 2 years because you've not had enough fuel. Doc Brown didn't give you enough. So go back to, say, early 2020. The AI conversation the construction industry was kind of completely different. It was completely different everywhere, I guess. What would you tell yourself sitting at your desk back then about what was actually coming?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think I'd talk about it really from the effect it's had on my work and my role and my business. I'd tell myself to embrace it and go with it, and it's going to be fun. Don't worry. I think because, and I think that luckily we have embraced it and we have gone with it, but I definitely haven't found it super easy to adjust to the changes that it's brought. And I think everyone's going to go through that, or everyone in the industries that are going to be really affected by AI and the work that's going to be affected by AI are going to go through a similar sort of emotional journey, really. Yeah, it changes what things you do, but ultimately it just gives you kind of superpowers, really, and you should just embrace it and enjoy it. And it's going to be fun.
Well, that's a brilliant, positive note to leave it on. So thank you so much, Sam, for joining us on today's podcast. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thanks, Emma. Cheers.
Cheers.
That was Sam Parkinson from Mettle Studio. The episode is called The AI Goldmine Nobody's Digging. And the question you're left with, whichever industry you're in, is which side of that binary your organization is on? Ready for AI or just talking about it? I'm Amrel Taff. This is The Control Layer. The full written piece with footnotes and the references is on thecontrollayer.arcava.ai. If this made you think, please subscribe. If it made you uncomfortable, well, that's kind of the point. I'll see you next week.